Hey, Shalom, Shalom. The brother Ratza Allah from GMS London Camp. First and foremost, want to give all praises and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakachodash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Blessings to the hopeful and sincere elect. It's not looking good for America, man. More and more as we draw closer to the war to end all wars. We're in the crux of it right now. But when it comes to the war of Armageddon, the amount of the troops which are being gathered over there in the Middle East, so to speak, more and more division is being shown between these nations and the world leaders, especially when it comes to NATO and the EU and defending their so-called American honor, which, as I said, there's a great division and a lot of infighting, internal disputes, and that goes into even Daniel's the second chapter where it talks about the 10 toes. Joshua, I don't want to butcher it, but it shall not cleave together, basically. Lesser words, but that chapter and verse in Daniel's the second chapter where it talks about they'll come together as men, but it shall not cleave to one another. That's the word then, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, and you can see it now, because they're, as of late, because of the Strait of Hormuz situation, and America basically looking like they're desperate right now for help, even though they said they was winning a war over there in the Middle East, and they was gonna, conquer the Iranians and destroy their habitations and all of that stuff, and so-called winning the war, as I said, contrary to popular belief, even these other nations, their so-called allies, part of the EU and NATO, realize that America's not winning the war, and and they don't want to be brought into this provocation of war off the backs of these Pisraelis, man, because they know that this is being used to for the wicked elite's agenda, or the Pisraelis' agenda, so to speak, for them to occupy the Middle East and make the great, start the great Israel project, or whatever they want to call it, which they want to basically take over the whole region of the Middle East, the Levant area, and as part of the great Israel project, so to speak. But they're coming into straits, man. And you got this article here, it says not our war, and this is basically coming from the other EU members like France, Macron, and Germany, and they're part of the EU, and they're not down with the get down basically of sending their warships to come to so-called defend America's honor over there in the Middle East, because of these Pisraelis that the least of the flock shall draw them out. But America's falling for the trick bag of the Pisraelis, because they're own lock, stock and barrel by the Pisraelis, man. The American president's basically another version of an Israeli president of the United States, basically. So he has to do what he's told. Meaning, DJ Trump, aka Nero 47, says not our war. How the world has reacted to Trump's call to patrol the Hormuz Straits. So they're not falling for the nations are drunk on the wine, and now the nations are mad, man. They're not coming to defend or put themselves on the line for America, because they know America's nothing but a bunch of backstabbers and a bunch of hypocrites, man. Cause the same nations that want to defend America, if they don't play ball, then what does America do? It penalizes them. It sends sanctions and tariffs on them and all that, threatens them and all that, make mockery of them on the world stage. So, America's not to be trusted, man. That's the spirit of the devil over there, man. That's why they don't even want to, negotiate or, parlay with them, so to speak, as of late. And ultimately it's going to come to, the war, between a war of words to actual nuclear weapons being fired from America's own allies on America's, Babylon the Great, and destroy that harlot of many wars. That's set upon many wars with nuclear fire. That's going to cause that lake of fire, man. So it's not our war. How the world has reacted to Trump's call for the patrol of the Hormuz Straits. Nations getting oil through the key shipping lane should send warships to the region the American president has demanded. But these other nations are not down with it, man. I haven't got the whole article here, but if you keep up with the latest news, it's basically these other EU nations, mainly France, Great Britain, Germany are not getting involved, with sending their warships to defend America, man. It says US President DJ Trump has called for all nations getting oil through the Straits of Hormuz to send their warships to secure navigation through a key shipping channel. And it's not going to, it's not going to America's plan. Basically, the only ones that's getting penalized outside of um, um, you know, these other nations like the European nations and all that is basically Israel and America. Like Apostle Tahar said, when it comes to the oil rigs and all of these different things, it's closed for business in America and Israel, but for the other nations, even certain EU nations, are still being able to negotiate and trade on the market and get their oil barrels, man. It's not really affecting them as much. So this is really, to show who's got these nations just show their allegiance against the great whore, man. And ultimately, as I said, they're gonna burn that place with fire. As we can read here, Revelation 17 and 16. This is in the 10 horns, which represents NATO and the EU, which thou sawest upon the beast, which are part of the beast system. These shall hate the whore. Yeah, they're gonna hate the whore. They're gonna hate America. As you can plainly see, all these nations are getting more and more disgusted and fed up with America and the shenanigans, especially when it comes to provocations of war and starting wars that don't need to be started, and causing contentions and strife where it's not necessarily needed, man. All because these devils crave power and that pride that's in them, man. Won't let them humble themselves. They don't want to drink that humble tea, but they're about to. It says, these shall hate the whore and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. So ultimately, these nations that are so-called allied with America, they're gonna burn that bitch with fire, man. Talks about that in Obadiah. It says, them that were at peace with thee, confederate with thee, have brought thee to the border, and laid a wound under thee. Because these other nations are getting fed up with America, and as I said, in the shenanigans. It says in that same chapter that Amalek or Esau, Edom, are greatly despised amongst the nations, and you can plainly see that on the world stage right now regarding BB and them, if that guy's even still alive, and the other Israelis over there, they're greatly despised amongst the nations, man, because of all the wickedness they've been doing, and it's been televised, man. It's been live streaming, the genocide over there with the Palestinians, and all these different attacks and wars that these Israelis are starting, false flag attacks and all these different things. And America is basically working in hand with the Israelis, as I said, because they're own lock, stock and barrel by the Israeli government. And America is basically another offset, or has a seat basically in the presidency as American president, the first, not one of the first, but DJ Trump right now is the Israeli American president right now. Verse 17. So for the Most High have put it in their hearts, meaning their minds, the kings of the earth, the hearts of the kings in the hand of the Lord, to fulfill his will, and to agree, and to give their kingdom unto the beast, until the words of the Most High shall be fulfilled. Yes, this is all about a fulfilling of the word of the Lord, and this is ultimately the judgment of Yahweh Hashem Yahushua upon the seed of the wicked, which is Esau, Edom, and these so-called white people, DJ Trump and them, BB and them. They're part of the seed of the wicked, man. The Edomites that are about to be destroyed and go into perdition. The kingdom's about to go into perdition, meaning Babylon the Great, America, is going to become a lake on fire, turn into a desert, pit full of destruction, and then ultimately they're going into slavery for 1,000 years to serve out their punishment for what they did to the Lord's chosen people, you Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, man, which are the real Israelites, man, not these gutter rats suffering from imposter syndrome, man. So this is Jeremiah 51:7. Babylon have been a golden cup in the Lord's hand. Yeah, all these nations used to look up to America at one point, Babylon, aka America, but now, everyone's getting fed up with America, man. Everyone's despising America right now. Really, they're despising Esau, Edom, all these nations, man, because they know that Americans can't be trusted, man. It says that made all the earth drunken. It says the nations have drunken of a wine, therefore the nations are mad. Yeah, at one point it was getting down, making their wealth, using America as a cash cow, but now, they're coming to see that that's coming. Dealing with America and that petrodollar has been nothing but a burden on their society and their economies, man. That's why they're separating themselves. And that's a clear example of that is the Strait of Hormuz situation where other nations are trading within one another. They're even saying that you can only trade for oil barrels with the Chinese yuan. And no longer can you trade with the American dollar. So they're trying to cut out America basically of the deals, man, because everyone's tired of dealing with America's, thick clay, perpetual debt, because that's what you have to deal with when you deal with the American petrodollar, American dollar in general. You're just dealing with nothing but incurable debt, man. That's never going to be paid off. So that's what these nations are fed up with dealing with. So the nations are mad. So that's even showing more of a separation of how these nations are not going to cleave to one another. It says Babylon is fallen and destroyed. How for her take balm for her pain, if so she may be healed. We would have healed Babylon, but she is not healed. Yes, America's not going to be made great again. And situations like this where they're struggling to get resources because they have to import these things, everything's exported. America doesn't really make anything anymore, so it's causing nothing but contentions and more strife on the American economy, which is in turn going to tank the American economy and even the world, because everyone's still relying at the moment on the petrodollar as the world reserve currency. So it's not just going to affect America on the world stage; it's going to affect the world market, stock markets on the world stage with all these other nations. Man, if the American economy, so-called, goes bust, which is about to go bust, de-dollarization and all that stuff. America's weak militarily, and financially. America's looking weak, very weak right now. So they're biding their time, but the time's ticking. It says, forsake her and let everyone go into their own country. Yeah, so NATO, EU nations, they don't even want to deal with certain topics of, or certain things to deal with America and the Israelis. They don't want to get involved. They want to deal with their own economic situations and get their get their get their houses in order, so to speak, before dealing with anything of their so-called foreign leaders and all these different things have to deal with. So for her judgment reacheth unto heaven and is lifted up into even to the skies. And basically these other nations know, like France and Germany, they know that America is looking very weak right now, as I just said, and that there's they're not as strong as they once was. The word of this power of manipulation and the scepter of the wicked is being broken as we speak, man. So these nations know that, man. So they don't want to get involved because they know that it's not going to work out for them in the long run, helping America to go and fight over there in a Middle Eastern war, man, that have nothing to do with them. So it's not going to work out in their favor. So they just, unless they have to force the hand and make them send them warships out there, they're not going to get involved, man. A last resort basically, and even then they're still going to be reluctant. But overall, all these nations are going to gather over there anyway, because the Lord said He's gathering the nations over there to the Middle East to pour upon them His indignation, man, to plead with them, meaning to judge them. Zechariah 13, it tells you the Lord's going to plead with all flesh, or Zechariah 3 and 8, should I say, if I'm not mistaken. He's bringing them all over there to plead with their flesh, meaning to judge them. So ultimately these nations are going to be involved in a war of Armageddon anyway, because it's all about the Lord turning this breaking this whole beast system down basically, and getting rid of America. It's Job 18:5. Yea, the light of the wicked shall be put out, and the spark of his fire shall not shine, meaning the wicked elite, so-called holders of the light, the Illuminati, council of the wicked. The wisdom that the Lord gave them is going to be wane. It's gonna start waning, man. That light that they once had is gonna starting to wane, and they can't manipulate and do all the mass magician shit they used to do before. To bewitch the people to follow in their trends and ways. It's not working as much as good as it used to. As I said, the Lord broken the scepter of the wicked. So right now they're fighting tooth and nail to hold on to some sort of power and dominion, so they can bring forth this new world order. But even with that, that's going to be short lived, because as soon as they're about to fill their belly, that's when the nuclear missiles are going to start flying, man. After the MOT to the B is made mandatory around the four winds. So Esau is basically in desperate times, man. In desperate times calls for desperate measures, man. He's just doing things out of desperation and not necessarily because it's just he can. He knows that he's on borrowed time, man. It's Revelations 12:12. The devil's gonna come down with great wrath, because he knows that he have but a short time. This is the light of the light shall be dark in his tabernacle, and his candles shall be put out with him. Yeah, that power of deceit, manipulation, witchcraft, all of that is waning, man. Esau's witchcraft and his magic is becoming more weaker and weaker by the day. And people are just starting to recognize this devil for truly who he is. It's basically a cave dweller of the earth. That's a Dennis the Menace type character, and just causing all kinds of mayhem and chaos on the earth. The sons of perdition, the sons of destruction, basically. The man of sin being revealed. So ultimately everyone's gonna shun this devil from society like they once did in history, and they're gonna burn his habitation with fire. Which is rightfully deserved, man. Because this devil's done way too much, and if he's not stopped for the elect's sake, there's gonna be no flesh left to be saved. But for the elect's sake, these days are gonna be short, as the Lord said, man. So we're in a time right now. Any day now, from here till end of this year, anything can happen within the next couple 6 to 7 months, whatever, man. The times are definitely changing, man. The atmosphere is changing, and America's on its way out, man. So it's a beautiful time to be alive, to witness it. Yeah, man. So that's mainly the main point. Reread verse 7. The steps of his strength or hunger shall be straightened. Yeah, it's coming into more and more positions of difficulty, like the whole Strait of Hormuz. No one's coming to aid them like they thought they would, because now that everyone's realizing all the wickedness that these devils have done throughout the ages to them. It's different, stages, different parts in history, and they know that America's not to be trusted, man. So now they're in straits within their own council. It says their steps of their strength shall be straightened. It says, and his own council shall cast him down. See, so that's why there's bare infighting, internal fighting, and trying to basically isolate America to defend its own honor. Since America thinks they're so big, bad, and ugly, with the hypergamy and all that, it's basically defend your own honor, man. You want to be the big bad wolf to show how strong you are, without depending on your so-called allies to come and help you. Because when we wanted to help you, you was talking shit. You was gaslighting. The first week when you started dropping bombs over there in Iran, you was acting like you conquered the Middle East already. But now you're still over there, sufferings. We're not ready for the long haul, and that's all of a sudden you're crying for help. It's like a bewildered herd, man. And that shows that Esau, man. That's that spirit of Nero. They're weak by nature, man. They're a bunch of wimps, man. They're not built for the war, basically. But they act like they are. But anyway, with that, hopefully brothers is edified. Give all praises and glory to Yahweh, Ba'Hashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'Hashem, Chodash, and Shalom to the hopeful and sincere elect.